Jason Turner's heart races as he steps into the ornate reception hall on the Bajoran homeworld. The human diplomat's mission is clear: secure a vital trade agreement. But as his eyes lock onto Aura, the stunning Bajoran assigned to guide him, Jason's focus wavers. He's acutely aware that his next actions could make or break humanity's interstellar aspirations. Without hesitation, Jason strides confidently toward Aura. The Bajoran females present watch with widening eyes, unused to such boldness. Their conservative culture dictates long, formal courtship rituals. Jason's direct approach sends ripples of excitement through the room. "I must say, your beauty rivals that of Earth's most breathtaking sunsets," Jason says, flashing a charming smile at Aura. Her cheeks flush a deeper shade of pink, her ornate earring catching the light as she tilts her head. Murmurs of surprise and interest spread among the Bajoran women. Male officials, however, bristle at what they perceive as disrespect. Tension thickens the air like a gathering storm. Kai Wynn, head of the Bajoran trade delegation, approaches with a stern expression. "Mr. Turner, a word," she says, her tone clipped. She leads him to a quiet corner. "Your behavior is unconventional. Remember, Earth's trade agreement hangs in the balance. Tread carefully." Jason nods, realizing the delicate tightrope he must walk. He glances at Aura, catching her stolen look of intrigue. She's clearly fascinated by human courtship practices, a fact that both thrills and complicates his mission. As the reception continues, Jason feels the weight of numerous gazes. Bajoran women observe him with undisguised curiosity, while male officials eye him warily. He's become the center of attention, for better or worse. Suddenly, a commotion at the entrance draws all eyes. A group of Cardassians enters, their scaled faces set in smug expressions. Jason's stomach drops. The Cardassians, a rival alien race, are here to undermine the human-Bajoran negotiations. Kai Wynn's face pales. "This is unexpected," she whispers to Jason. "Be on guard. They'll exploit any weakness." Jason's mind races. He must navigate cultural misunderstandings, balance diplomatic tensions, and manage his growing attraction to Aura, all while preventing Cardassian sabotage. The fate of humanity's interstellar alliance rests on his shoulders. As the Cardassians begin to mingle, spreading whispers and sowing doubt, Jason makes a bold decision. He approaches Aura once more, aware of the countless eyes upon them. "I believe we have much to discuss regarding our people's future relations," he says, loud enough for others to hear. "Perhaps we could meet privately to delve deeper into these matters?" Aura's eyes sparkle with interest. "I would be honored, Mr. Turner." The reception hall buzzes with reaction. Jason has just set the stage for potential conflict, romance, and diplomatic intrigue. As he leads Aura away, he knows the coming days will test his skills as both a diplomat and a man. The dance of courtship and negotiation has only just begun. As Jason led Aura away from the bustling reception hall, he could feel the weight of countless eyes upon them. The air crackled with tension and possibility. Navigating through the ornate corridors of the Bajoran diplomatic complex, they soon arrived at a private chamber designed for confidential discussions. The room was a stark contrast to the opulent reception hall. Its simplicity spoke of purpose rather than pageantry. Large windows dominated one wall, offering a breathtaking view of the capital city's skyline. The twinkling lights of Bajor's urban sprawl stretched out before them, a testament to the planet's resilience and progress. Jason gestured for Aura to take a seat in one of the comfortable chairs, arranged around a low table. As they settled in, he took a moment to study her features. The warm light from the city outside cast a soft glow on her face, accentuating the gentle ridges on her nose that marked her as Bajoran. "I must say this is quite a view," Jason began, his voice casual as he gestured towards the windows. "It reminds me of Earth's cities, in a way, though I doubt any of our skylines can boast such unique architecture." Aura's eyes lit up with interest. "You find our buildings unique? I'd love to hear more about Earth's cities. Are they very different from ours?" Jason smiled, seizing the opportunity to steer the conversation towards cultural exchange. He leaned forward slightly, reducing the distance between them. "Oh, they vary greatly, from the towering skyscrapers of New York to the historical charm of Paris. Each has its own character, much like I imagine the cities of Bajor do. As they talked, Jason carefully employed human flirting techniques. He maintained steady eye contact, allowing his gaze to linger just a moment longer than necessary. When emphasizing a point, he'd briefly touch Aura's arm or hand, each contact sending a jolt of electricity through him. Aura, unused to such forwardness, found herself both flustered and fascinated. Her cheeks flushed a deeper shade of pink, and she unconsciously leaned closer to Jason as their conversation progressed. Earth's social customs seem so direct, Aura remarked, her voice a mix of curiosity and something more. Here on Bajor, such open displays of interest would be considered quite bold. Jason's heart raced at her words. He was treading a fine line between diplomacy and desire, and he knew it. Sometimes, being direct can lead to the most rewarding outcomes, he replied, his voice low and warm. Both in personal matters and in diplomacy. Outside the chamber, unbeknownst to the pair inside, Vedic Barail positioned himself near the door. Sent by the suspicious Kai Wynn, he strained to catch snippets of their conversation, his face a mask of concentration. As Jason and Aura's interaction intensified, neither noticed the small, inconspicuous device hidden in a corner of the room. Gul Dukat, the Cardassian spy who had infiltrated the reception earlier, smiled with satisfaction as he activated the surveillance equipment from a safe distance. Inside the room, the atmosphere grew charged with unspoken attraction. Jason, emboldened by Aura's receptiveness, decided to take another risk. You know, I've heard about a renowned garden here on Bajor. They say it's quite beautiful. He paused, gauging her reaction. Perhaps we could continue our cultural exchange there, in a more intimate setting? Aura's eyes widened at the suggestion. She hesitated, visibly torn between her growing attraction and her cultural upbringing. The silence stretched between them, taut with possibility. Before Aura could respond, a sharp beep cut through the tension. Jason's communication device lit up, signaling an urgent message from Earth. Excusing himself, he stepped away to read it. The message was terse and to the point. His superiors were concerned about rumors of his unorthodox approach. The warning was clear. If he jeopardized the trade agreement, there would be consequences. Jason's mind focused as he absorbed the implications. The pressure to balance his personal desires with his diplomatic responsibilities suddenly felt overwhelming. He turned back to Aura, his expression carefully neutral. My apologies for the interruption, he said smoothly. Shall we continue our discussion? As they prepared to leave the chamber, the door suddenly opened. Vedic Barail stood there, his attempt to appear casual failing miserably. The awkward moment hung in the air, a stark reminder of the cultural chasm between human openness and Bajoran discretion. Jason and Aura exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. As they stepped out into the corridor, the weight of their unfinished conversation and the complexity of their situation settled upon them. Unbeknownst to Jason, news of his private meeting with Aura was already spreading like wildfire through the diplomatic corps. Other Bajoran women, intrigued by rumors of human courtship methods, began to cast curious glances his way. As Jason made his way back to his quarters, his mind raced with the events of the evening. The trade negotiations, his growing feelings for Aura, the warning from his superiors, and the palpable tension with the Bajoran officials, all swirled in a complex dance. Just as he reached his door, a small datapad caught his eye. It lay inconspicuously on the floor, as if slipped under his door. Picking it up, Jason's eyes widened as he read the anonymous message displayed on its screen. Beware, Cardassian eyes and ears are everywhere. Watch your words carefully. Jason glanced up and down the empty corridor, a chill running down his spine. As he entered his quarters, he knew that tomorrow's rendezvous with Aura in the Bajoran garden would be more than just a romantic interlude. It could be the key to unraveling the web of intrigue that was rapidly tightening around him. As the first rays of Bajor's sun peeked over the horizon, Jason stood before the mirror in his quarters, adjusting his uniform with meticulous care. The anonymous message from the night before burdened immensely on his mind, but he pushed the concern aside, focusing instead on his upcoming rendezvous with Aura. He arrived at the renowned Bajoran garden well before the appointed time, eager to scout the location and gather his thoughts. The garden was a masterpiece of alien horticulture, with winding paths flanked by vibrant flora unlike anything on Earth. Exotic fragrances filled the air, and the gentle rustling of leaves created a soothing ambiance. As Jason wandered through the garden, he marveled at the delicate balance of nature and cultivation. Towering trees with iridescent bark stretched towards the sky, their branches adorned with cascading vines bearing star-shaped flowers. Nearby, a small stream trickled over polished stones, its crystal-clear waters teeming with tiny, bioluminescent creatures. His contemplation was interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps. Turning, he saw Aura approaching, her face a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. She wore a flowing dress in shades of deep purple and blue, reminiscent of the Bajoran night sky. "Good morning, Aura," Jason said, his voice warm and inviting. "I'm glad you could make it." Aura's eyes darted around, taking in their surroundings. "It's beautiful here," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never actually visited this garden before." Seizing the moment, Jason stepped closer and gently took her hand in his. "Then allow me to be your guide," he said with a smile. "There's a particularly lovely section just around this bend." As they strolled along the narrow path, Jason maintained his hold on Aura's hand, guiding her past delicate ferns and brilliant flower beds. He could feel the warmth of her skin, the slight tremble in her fingers, betraying her mix of excitement and trepidation. Aura's cheeks flushed a deeper shade of pink, her nose ridges crinkling in a way that Jason found utterly charming. "This is quite forward," she murmured, but made no move to pull away. As they rounded a corner, they encountered a group of young Bajoran women, their eyes widening in recognition as they spotted Jason. Excited whispers rippled through the group as they approached. "Mr. Turner," one of the women called out, "we saw you at the reception. We were hoping to learn more about human customs." Jason glanced at Aura, who nodded encouragingly. Seizing the opportunity, he stepped forward with a warm smile. "Of course, I'd be happy to share. In fact, why don't I demonstrate some common human greetings?" He extended his hand to the nearest woman. "This is called a handshake. It's a standard greeting in many Earth cultures." As she hesitantly placed her hand in his, Jason gave it a firm but gentle shake. The women watched with rapt attention, their expressions a mix of shock and fascination at the casual physical contact. Emboldened by their interest, Jason continued, "And among close friends or family, we often greet with a hug, like this." He turned to Aura, raising an eyebrow in silent question. She nodded, and Jason enveloped her in a warm embrace. The assembled Bajoran women gasped, their eyes wide with amazement. As Jason released Aura, he noticed a change in her demeanor. A spark of tenacity flashed in her eyes, and before he could react, she leaned in and pressed her lips to his in a soft, tentative kiss. Time seemed to stand still as their lips met. The garden around them faded away, leaving only the warmth of their connection. When they finally parted, Jason was acutely aware of the stunned silence that had fallen over their audience. The quiet was broken by a mix of scandalized murmurs and excited chatter. Some garden visitors turned away in shock, while others leaned in, clearly intrigued by this public display of affection. Before Jason could fully process what had happened, a commotion arose from the path behind them. A group of Bajoran males, led by a stern-faced man with graying hair, approached with purposeful strides. "What is the meaning of this?" the leader demanded, his voice sharp with anger. "This behavior is an affront to Bajoran values." Jason recognized the man as Jaro Essa, a prominent conservative politician. He took a deep breath, drawing on his diplomatic training to address the situation. "Minister Essa," Jason began, his tone respectful but firm, "I apologize if our actions have caused offense. It was not our intention to disrespect Bajoran customs, but rather to explore the cultural differences between our peoples." Jaro's eyes narrowed. "Exploration is one thing, Mr. Turner, but this blatant disregard for our societal norms is unacceptable." As the confrontation escalated, Jason noticed a group of off-duty Starfleet officers approaching. Their presence added another layer of complexity to the already tense situation. One of the officers, a lieutenant commander, stepped forward. "If I may, Minister Essa," she interjected, "cultural exchange is a fundamental aspect of interstellar relations. While it's important to respect local customs, it's equally vital to remain open to new perspectives." The debate continued, with voices rising and falling as arguments were presented from all sides. Jason found himself at the center of a storm, trying to balance diplomatic tact with his growing feelings for Aura. Suddenly, his communication device chirped insistently. Excusing himself, Jason stepped away to answer the call. The voice of his superior crackled through the device, demanding an immediate explanation for the reports they'd received about his unorthodox approach. As Jason struggled to formulate a response, he felt a gentle touch on his arm. Aura stood beside him, concern etched on her face. She leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear. "We need to talk," she whispered urgently. "Somewhere private. There's someone you need to meet." Intrigued and somewhat relieved for an excuse to step away from the chaos, Jason nodded. Aura took his hand once more, leading him deeper into the garden, away from the prying eyes and heated discussions. As they navigated through dense foliage, Jason's mind raced. Who did Aura want him to meet? And how would this encounter affect the delicate balance of personal desire and diplomatic duty he was struggling to maintain? They rounded a final bend, emerging into a secluded clearing dominated by a massive tree with shimmering, silver-hued leaves. Standing beneath its canopy was a lithe Bajoran woman with fiery red hair and an air of quiet intensity. "Jason," Aura said softly, "I'd like you to meet Kira Nerys. She has some information that might change everything. Everything about their situation." Jason's eyes widened as he took in the sight of Kira Nerys. Her presence exuded an air of quiet authority and tenacity. Aura stepped forward, her voice low and urgent. "Jason, Kira is part of the Bajoran resistance. She has crucial information about Cardassian espionage activities on Bajor." Kira nodded, her piercing gaze fixed on Jason. "Mr. Turner, we have reason to believe that Gul Dukat has infiltrated your diplomatic mission. He's been conducting surveillance on you and other key figures." Jason's mind raced, connecting the dots. The anonymous message, the strange looks from Cardassian delegates, the sudden interest in his interactions with Aura. It all made sense now. "We need your help," Kira continued. "We have a plan to expose Dukat's activities, but it requires your participation. It's risky, and it will likely cause some cultural friction." Jason glanced at Aura, who nodded encouragingly. He took a deep breath, weighing his options. Finally, he spoke, his voice firm with commitment. "I'm in. What's the plan?" Over the next hour, Kira outlined their strategy. They would use Jason and Aura's budding relationship as bait, staging a series of public encounters designed to draw out Dukat's surveillance efforts. By pushing the boundaries of acceptable behavior in Bajoran society, they hoped to force Dukat into revealing his hand. The following day, Jason and Aura put their plan into action. They arrived at the bustling Bajoran marketplace hand in hand. The crowded plaza was a riot of colors, sounds, and smells. Vendors called out their wares. The aroma of spiced hasperat filled the air, and curious glances followed the human Bajoran couple as they made their way through the throng. Jason leaned in close to Aura, his lips brushing her ear. "Remember, we need to be noticeable," he whispered. Aura nodded, a mix of excitement and nervousness evident in her eyes. They stopped at a food stall, where Jason purchased a plate of unfamiliar Bajoran delicacies. With deliberate care, he selected a morsel and held it up to Aura's lips. She hesitated for a moment before allowing him to feed her, her cheeks flushing at the intimate gesture. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some Bajorans turned away, scandalized, while others watched with undisguised fascination. From her position disguised as a vendor, Kira scanned the area, keeping an eye out for any signs of Dukat's hidden cameras. Emboldened by their success, Jason decided to up the ante. He pulled Aura close and spoke loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "You know, on Earth, we have a tradition of dancing in public. Would you like me to teach you?" Aura's eyes widened, but she played along. "I'd be honored to learn, Jason." With a grin, Jason took Aura's hand and led her to a small open area in the marketplace. He placed one hand on her waist and held her other hand in his. "It's called a waltz," he explained. Just follow my lead." As Jason began to guide Aura through the steps of the dance, the reaction from the crowd was immediate. Gasps of shock mingled with exclamations of delight. The sight of a human and a Bajoran locked in such close physical contact was unprecedented. From across the marketplace, an angry voice cut through the growing commotion. "This is an outrage!" Jaro Essa, the conservative politician from the garden confrontation, pushed his way through the crowd. His face was red with anger as he pointed an accusing finger at Jason and Aura. "You mock our customs and corrupt our youth with your degenerate human behavior." A group of like-minded Bajorans gathered behind Jaro, their faces twisted with disapproval. As they began to chant slogans decrying the human influence on Bajor, Jason and Aura continued their dance, refusing to be intimidated. The commotion attracted more attention. A group of young Bajoran women approached Jason, their eyes bright with curiosity. "Mr. Turner," one of them called out, "could you teach us more about human customs?" As Jason engaged with the interested Bajorans, explaining the nuances of human greetings and social interactions, Aura noticed a group of Bajoran men watching from the sidelines. Their faces were dark with resentment, clearly threatened by Jason's popularity among the women. The situation in the marketplace was rapidly spiraling out of control. Raised voices and heated arguments erupted throughout the plaza. Kira, still in her vendor disguise, caught Jason's eye and gave a subtle nod. Their plan was working. Dukat would surely be monitoring this chaos closely. Suddenly, a hush fell over the crowd as Vedic Barel arrived, flanked by two other religious figures. His face was a mask of concern as he surveyed the scene. "My children," Barel's voice rang out, silencing the arguments. "Let us not forget the virtues of tolerance and understanding. Surely we can find a way to bridge our cultural differences without resorting to conflict." As Barel attempted to mediate between the various factions, Jason's communication device chirped urgently. Excusing himself, he stepped away to answer the call, his stomach sinking as he recognized the voice of his superior. "Turner, what in the name of Earth's moons do you think you're doing?" The angry voice crackled through the device. "We've just received reports of your performance in the marketplace. This is a diplomatic nightmare. You are ordered to cease all personal interactions with the Bajoran woman immediately and return to strictly professional behavior. Do I make myself clear?" Jason's mind raced as he tried to formulate a response that wouldn't compromise their plan. Before he could reply, he felt a hand on his arm. It was Kira, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "We've got him," she whispered urgently. "I've pinpointed Dukat's surveillance hub. It's time for the next phase of our plan." As Jason ended the call with his superior, he looked across the marketplace at Aura. Their eyes met, and he saw the conflict in her gaze, the pull between her growing feelings for him and her loyalty to Bajoran society. The cultural clash they had instigated was taking its toll on both of them. Before Jason could reach Aura, a commotion at the edge of the marketplace caught his attention. A group of Cardassian diplomats had arrived, their scaled faces impassive as they surveyed the chaotic scene. Their presence added a new layer of tension to the already volatile situation. As Jason, Aura, and Kira regrouped, preparing for their covert operation to expose Dukat, Jason's communication device chirped once more. This time, it was an encrypted message from Earth. His superiors informed him that the situation on Bajor had attracted the attention of other races in the sector. A Klingon delegation was en route, their interest piqued by the human-Bajoran cultural clash. The message was clear. The success or failure of Jason's mission now had far-reaching consequences beyond just human-Bajoran relations. The stability of the entire sector could hinge on his ability to navigate this complex cultural and political landscape. As night fell over Bajor, Jason, Aura, and Kira huddled together in a secluded alley, finalizing their plans to infiltrate Dukat's surveillance hub. The stakes had never been higher, and the risks were enormous. But as they prepared to move out, Jason felt a surge of drive. Whatever the outcome, he knew that the events of the next few hours would change everything. The course of interstellar relations forever. With a shared knot of grit, the trio set their plan in motion. Jason, Aura, and Kira huddled together in the shadows of a narrow alleyway, their voices barely above a whisper as they finalized the details of their scheme. The cool night air carried the faint scent of Bajoran lilacs, a stark contrast to the tension that hung heavily around them. "We need to draw Dukat out," Kira explained, her eyes darting around to ensure they weren't being overheard. "I've prepared false information about a secret meeting between you two at the abandoned temple just outside the city." Aura nodded, her fingers intertwining nervously with Jason's. "It's the perfect location, isolated enough to be believable, but with enough vantage points for Dukat to set up his surveillance equipment." Jason squeezed Aura's hand reassuringly. "All right, let's do this. How do we make sure Dukat takes the bait?" Before Kira could respond, Jason's communication device chirped insistently. He grimaced as he read the incoming message. "Change of plans. I've been ordered to attend a formal diplomatic dinner with the Klingon delegation tonight. Kai Wynn is hosting." Kira's eyes narrowed. This could work to our advantage. Dukat won't be able to resist gathering intelligence on such a high-profile event. We'll proceed with planting the false information, but you'll need to maintain your cover at the dinner. As Jason prepared for the dinner, Aura and Kira set about spreading whispers of the fabricated rendezvous through carefully chosen channels. They knew it wouldn't take long for the information to reach Dukat's eager ears. The grand hall where Kai Wynn hosted the dinner was a testament to Bajoran artistry. Intricate tapestries adorned the walls, depicting scenes from Bajoran mythology. The air was heavy with the aroma of traditional Bajoran cuisine, a calculated move to impress the Klingon delegates. Jason entered the hall, his dress uniform crisp and immaculate. He scanned the room, noting the various dignitaries present. His gaze lingered on Aura, resplendent in a deep blue gown, before forcing himself to look away. He had to maintain a professional demeanor, no matter how difficult it might be. As Jason made his way to his assigned seat, he found himself next to a striking Klingon woman. Her eyes sparkled with intelligence and a hint of mischief as she introduced herself. "I am Kalar," she said, her voice a low purr. "I've heard interesting things about human courtship rituals. Perhaps you could demonstrate some for me later?" Jason felt a flush creep up his neck. That's not really..." Kalar laughed, a rich, throaty sound that drew the attention of nearby guests. "Relax, Mr. Turner. I'm merely curious about interspecies relations. Professionally, of course." Across the table, Aura watched the exchange with poorly concealed discomfort. She stabbed at her food with more force than necessary, earning concerned glances from her tablemates. The dinner progressed with an undercurrent of tension. Jaro Essa, seated not far from Jason, glared daggers at the human diplomat throughout the meal. As the final course was served, Jaro could no longer contain himself. Rising to his feet, he pointed an accusing finger at Jason. "This man has made a mockery of our customs. He flaunts his disregard for Bajoran values, corrupting our women with his human ways. I demand his immediate removal from Bajor." A hush fell over the room. The Klingon delegates leaned forward, clearly intrigued by the outburst. Kai Wynn rose smoothly, her face a mask of serene diplomacy. "Jaro, please, let us not forget the virtues of tolerance and understanding," she said, her voice carrying easily across the silent hall. "Perhaps what we need is not division, but a bridge between our cultures." She turned to Jason, a benevolent smile on her face. "Mr. Turner, would you be willing to participate in traditional Bajoran courtship rituals? As a gesture of goodwill and cultural exchange, of course." Jason's mind raced. This unexpected turn could jeopardize their plans to expose Dukat, but refusing would only inflame the situation further. He glanced at Aura, seeing the same conflict mirrored in her eyes. Before Jason could respond, the doors to the hall burst open. Gul Dukat strode in, his scaled face set in lines of concern. "My apologies for the interruption," Dukat said, his eyes scanning the room. "I have urgent information regarding the trade negotiations that simply couldn't wait." As Dukat engaged with Kai Wynn and the other diplomats, Jason noticed Kira slipping out of the hall. She caught his eye briefly, giving him a subtle nod. The plan was in motion. Realizing he needed to create a diversion, Jason turned to Kalar. "You mentioned being curious about human customs. How about a demonstration of human strength?" Kalar's eyes lit up with interest. A contest? Now that sounds entertaining. As Jason and Kalar began their impromptu strength competition, drawing the attention of the other guests, Aura seized the opportunity to slip away unnoticed. She hurried through the corridors of the building, her heart pounding with the urgency of their mission. Outside, she encountered a group of young Bajoran women she recognized from the marketplace incident. Their eyes widened with excitement as they saw her. "Aura, we've been so inspired by your bravery," one of them said. "Is there anything we can do to help?" Aura hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Actually, yes, I need to create a distraction. Can you help me?" As Aura raced towards Dukat's hidden surveillance hub, the sounds of chaos erupted behind her. The young Bajoran women had taken to the streets, loudly proclaiming their support for interspecies, relationships, and cultural exchange. Meanwhile, Kira worked furiously inside the hub, downloading evidence of Dukat's espionage activities. She heard footsteps approaching and tensed, preparing for confrontation. The door slid open, revealing Aura, slightly out of breath. "Kira, we need to hurry. Dukat left the dinner. He might be on his way back here." Together, they combed through the data, uncovering not just proof of Dukat's current activities, but also long-term Cardassian plans to manipulate Bajoran Federation relations. Back at the dinner, Jason's strength contest with Kalar had evolved into a full-blown cultural exchange. Delegates from various species were now eagerly participating, sharing their own feats of strength and agility. Vedek Bareil watched the proceedings with growing interest. The sight of so many different species coming together in friendly competition was slowly softening his stance on human-Bajoran relations. As the night wore on, Jason kept glancing towards the door, anxiously awaiting Kira and Aura's return. The weight of the evidence they might have uncovered pressed heavily on his mind. Finally, he spotted them, slipping back into the hall. Kira made her way discreetly to Kai Wynn, whispering urgently in her ear. The Kai's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, the only sign of her shock at the information. Jason caught Aura's eye across the room. She gave him a subtle nod, confirming their success. Now came the hard part, deciding how to use the information they had gathered without causing a diplomatic incident that could jeopardize everything they had worked for. As the dinner began to wind down, Jason found himself at a crossroads. The evidence against Dukat was damning, but revealing it could expose the extent of human involvement in Bajoran affairs. The delicate balance of interstellar relations hung in the balance, and the next move would be crucial. Kai Wynn rose to address the assembled guests, her face unreadable. "My friends," she began, her voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. "It seems that tonight has brought us more than just a cultural exchange." Exchange. She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. "But it seems that tonight has also brought us something far more pressing." Before Kai Wynn could elaborate, the lights flickered and died. Darkness engulfed the grand hall, plunging the gathered dignitaries into confusion. Startled gasps and murmurs filled the air as everyone struggled to orient themselves in the sudden blackout. "Everyone, please remain calm." Kai Wynn's voice cut through the darkness, steady and authoritative. "It appears we are experiencing a power outage." Jason's military training kicked in immediately. He reached for his communicator, only to find it unresponsive. "It's not just the lights," he announced to those nearby. "Communications are down too." As if on cue, a Bajoran aide burst into the hall, his voice breathless. "Kai Wynn, we've received reports of a planet-wide blackout. A massive solar flare has disrupted all our systems." In the ensuing chaos, Jason felt a hand grasp his arm. He tensed, ready for a potential threat, but relaxed when he recognized Aura's voice. "Jason, Dukat's gone," she whispered urgently. "He must have slipped out in the confusion." Jason's mind raced. The carefully laid plans to expose Dukat were unraveling before his eyes. He needed to act fast. "Kalar," he called out, remembering the Klingon diplomat's superior night vision. "We need your help. Dukat's escaping, and we can't let him get away." Kalar's voice came from nearby, tinged with excitement. "A hunt in the dark? Now that's my kind of diplomacy." As Jason and Kalar prepared to pursue Dukat, Aura pulled him close. "Kira and I will secure the evidence from the surveillance hub. Be careful, Jason." He squeezed her hand in response, then turned to Kalar. "Let's move." The two of them navigated through the darkened halls of the building, relying on Kalar's keen senses to guide them. As they emerged onto the streets of the Bajoran capital, they were met with a scene of growing panic. Citizens stumbled about in the darkness, calls of confusion and fear echoing through the night. "Which way?" Jason asked, squinting into the gloom. Kalar paused, her eyes scanning the shadowy cityscape. "There," she pointed, "movement near the temple district." They set off at a run, weaving through the disoriented crowds. As they approached the outskirts of the city, Jason could make out the looming silhouette of an ancient Bajoran temple against the starlit sky. "He's inside," Kalar growled, her warrior instincts clearly aroused by the chase. They entered the temple cautiously, aware that Dukat could be lying in wait. The interior was a maze of twisting corridors and hidden chambers, perfect for an ambush. "We need to split up," Jason whispered. "Cover more ground." Kalar nodded, her eyes gleaming in the darkness. "Happy hunting, human." As Jason crept through the temple, his senses on high alert, he could hear the distant sounds of unrest from the city. He pushed the worry for Aura and the others from his mind, focusing on the task at hand. Meanwhile, back in the heart of the city, Aura and Kira raced through the pitch-black corridors of the government complex. Aura's intimate knowledge of the building's layout proved invaluable as they navigated the darkness. "Left here," Aura guided, her hand trailing along the wall. "The hub should be just ahead." As they rounded the corner, they collided with a group of figures moving in the opposite direction. Aura felt a scaled hand grasp her arm, and her heart sank. Cardassians. "Well, well," a silky voice purred in the darkness. "What do we have here?" Kira reacted instantly, her fist connecting with the unseen Cardassian. The corridor erupted into chaos as the two groups grappled in the darkness. Aura found herself facing off against a Cardassian operative, her mind racing as she tried to recall the self-defense moves she'd seen Jason demonstrate. As her attacker lunged, she sidestepped, using his momentum to throw him off balance. To her surprise, the move worked perfectly. "Kira!" she called out. "I've got the evidence. We need to move." They fought their way free of the Cardassians, clutching the precious data chips containing Dukat's surveillance records. As they emerged from the building, they were met with a scene of growing chaos. A large crowd had gathered in the central square, their angry voices carrying through the night air. At the forefront stood Jaro Essa, his face illuminated by the flickering light of improvised torches. "The humans have brought this calamity upon us," Jaro shouted, his voice whipping the crowd into a frenzy. "We must remove them from our world." As the mob began to move towards the spaceport, another voice rose to challenge Jaro. Vedek Barail stepped forward, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the surrounding chaos. "My brothers and sisters," Barail called out, his voice carrying a note of authority that gave even the angriest protesters pause. "Let us not act in haste or anger. The prophets teach us to seek understanding, not conflict." The crowd's momentum faltered, torn between Jaro's fiery rhetoric and Barail's measured words. In this moment of hesitation, a new group pushed their way to the front. Led by a young Bajoran woman named Lita, they carried makeshift signs supporting cultural exchange with humans. "The humans are our friends," Lita proclaimed. "They've shown us new ways of thinking, new ways of loving. We can't let fear drive them away." The square erupted into heated debates as Bajorans argued amongst themselves. The population visibly split between those supporting Jaro's conservative stance and those rallying behind Lita's progressive message. As dawn began to break over the horizon, the first rays of sunlight illuminated the ancient temple where Jason and Kalar had cornered Dukat. The Cardassian stood with his back against a stone altar, a sinister smile playing across his scaled features. "It's over, Dukat," Jason said, his voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. Dukat's smile widened. "Oh, I don't think so, Mr. Turner. You see, I've taken precautions. A dead man's switch, if you will. If I'm not released, some rather damaging information about both Bajoran and Federation officials will be broadcast across the quadrant." Jason's mind raced, weighing the implications of Dukat's threat. The evidence they had gathered could bring Dukat to justice, but at what cost? The potential fallout from his dead man's switch could destabilize not just Bajor, but the entire sector. As the first communication systems began to flicker back to life across the planet, Jason made his decision. He reached for his newly functional communicator, preparing to call for a security team to take Dukat into custody. But before he could speak, the device crackled with an incoming transmission. "Jason," Aura's voice came through, tense and urgent. "You need to get back to the city center now. Things are spiraling out of control." Jason looked at Dukat, then at Kaelar. The Klingon nodded, understanding the unspoken request to keep watch over their prisoner. With a final warning glare at Dukat, Jason turned and raced out of the temple, heading back towards the heart of the city where the fate of human-Bajoran relations hung in the balance. As he approached the central square, the cacophony of angry voices grew louder. Jason could see the crowd had swelled, with Jaro S's conservatives and Lita's progressives facing off against each other. In the middle stood Kai Wynn, her face a mask of concern as she attempted to mediate between the factions. Jason spotted Aura and Kira at the edge of the square, clutching what he assumed was the evidence from Dukat's surveillance hub. He made his way towards them, acutely aware that all eyes were turning to him as he approached. The noise in the square died down as Jason reached Aura and Kira. He could feel the weight of expectation from all sides. The conservatives waiting for an excuse to expel him, the progressives hoping for a sign of unity, and the political leaders anxious for a resolution that wouldn't upend the delicate balance of power. Jason took a deep breath, knowing that his next words could shape the future of not just Bajor, but potentially the entire sector. The evidence against Dukat was in his grasp, but so too was the Cardassians' threat of mutually assured destruction. As he opened his mouth to speak, Jason realized that his unconventional approach to diplomacy had led him to this pivotal moment where the personal and the political had become inextricably intertwined. With a deep breath, Jason stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension in the square. "People of Bajor," he began, his words carrying across the hushed crowd. "I stand before you not just as a human, but as someone who has come to care deeply for your world and your people." He glanced at Aura, drawing strength from her presence. "We've uncovered evidence of a grave threat to Bajor's sovereignty and security. Gul Dukat, a high-ranking Cardassian official, has been conducting extensive surveillance operations on your planet." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Jason continued, his voice firm and clear. "This evidence, gathered at great risk by Bajoran and human allies, exposes Dukat's attempts to manipulate your society and government for Cardassian gain." As Jason spoke, Kai Wynn's expression shifted from concern to drive. She stepped forward, her ornate robes catching the first rays of dawn. "In light of these revelations," she announced, her voice ringing with authority, "I am calling for an emergency session of the Bajoran Council. We must address this threat and its implications for our people and our ongoing negotiations with the Federation." The crowd murmured, a mix of shock, anger, and fear rippling through the gathered Bajorans. Jaro S's face contorted with rage, while Lita and her supporters exchanged worried glances. As the council members began to file into the government complex, Jason felt a hand on his arm. He turned to find Aura, her eyes bright with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "You did it," she said softly. "But what happens now?" Before Jason could respond, his communicator chirped. "Excuse me," he said, stepping aside to answer the call. Admiral Nechayev's stern voice came through. "Commander Turner, Starfleet Command is monitoring the situation closely. The Federation Council is deeply concerned about the potential ramifications of these events. Your actions in the next few hours could shape the future of this entire sector." Jason's fist tight. "Understood, Admiral. What are my orders?" "Secure a favorable outcome for Federation interests, Commander. But remember, we cannot afford to lose the trust you've built with the Bajorans. Tread carefully." As Jason ended the call, he noticed Kaelar approaching, a glint of respect in her eyes. "Impressive handling of the situation, human," she said, her voice low. "The Klingon Empire has taken notice. We have a proposal that might interest you and the Bajorans." Before Kaelar could elaborate, a commotion erupted near the entrance of the government complex. Guards were shouting, and people were scattering in panic. "Dukat has escaped!" a breathless Bajoran security officer announced. He overpowered his guards during a power fluctuation and fled. Jason's mind raced. The delicate situation had just become exponentially more complicated. He turned to Kielar, his expression grim. We'll have to discuss that proposal later. Right now, we need to organize a search party. As Jason began issuing orders, he noticed Aura deep in conversation with Lita and a group of young Bajoran women. They were listening intently, their faces a mix of curiosity and admiration. Aura caught his eye and excused herself from the group. Jason, she said as she approached, her voice filled with dedication. I want to help find Dukat. I know this planet, and I've learned so much from you. Let me join the search team. Jason hesitated, concern etched on his face. But as he looked into Aura's eyes, he saw a strength and persistence that he couldn't ignore. All right, he nodded, but stay close and be careful. As word of Aura's decision spread, murmurs of surprise and admiration rippled through the crowd. Many Bajorans, especially the younger generation, were visibly moved by her courage. Inside the council chambers, heated debates raged. Jaro Essa's voice boomed through the hall. This is precisely why we should limit our interactions with outsiders. Look at the chaos they've brought to our world. Vedek Barel countered calmly. But it was through cooperation with the humans that we uncovered this threat. Perhaps this is a sign that we should embrace new alliances, not retreat into isolation. As the arguments continued, Jason received another urgent communication. A Starfleet intelligence officer appeared on the small screen. Commander, we've detected unusual activity on Bajor's moon. It appears Dukat has retreated to a hidden Cardassian base there. He's rallying his remaining operatives for what looks like a final, desperate move against Bajor. Jason's mind whirled with the implications. He looked up to see Kalar watching him intently. An idea began to form. Kalar, he said, you mentioned a Klingon proposal. Does it involve military support? The Klingon woman grinned, showing her pointed teeth. Indeed it does, Commander. A chance to strike at the Cardassians. The Empire would be most interested. Jason nodded, his decision made. Then let's give them that chance. I'm forming a joint task force. Human, Bajoran, and Klingon. We're going after Dukat. As Jason began assembling his team, Aura appeared at his side. I'm coming with you, she said, her voice brooking no argument. This is my world, my fight too. Jason looked at her, seeing not just the woman he had come to care for, but a symbol of the change sweeping through Bajor. He nodded, a mix of pride and concern in his eyes. As the diverse group boarded a shuttle bound for Bajor's moon, Jason couldn't help but marvel at the sight. Humans, Bajorans, and Klingons, working side by side. It was a powerful image, one that he hoped would resonate with the council members still deliberating Bajor's future. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, and as they lifted off, Jason felt Aura's hand slip into his. They exchanged a look, both acutely aware of the growing connection between them and the potential consequences it held for their respective worlds. As Bajor receded beneath them, the moon loomed large in the view screen. Somewhere on its cratered surface, Dukat was preparing his last stand. Jason tightened his grip on Aura's hand, knowing that the next few hours would test not only their skills and courage, but also the strength of the bond forming between their two peoples. People's two worlds and all that lay between them. As the shuttle ascended through Bajor's atmosphere, Jason's tactical mind shifted into high gear. He turned to address the diverse group assembled in the cramped cabin. Listen up, everyone. We're about to engage in a high-risk operation on unfamiliar terrain. Our target is Gul Dukat, and our mission is to neutralize the threat he poses to Bajor and the Federation. Kawalar nodded approvingly, her hand resting on the hilt of her daktag. A worthy hunt, she growled. As they approached Bajor's moon, the shuttle's sensors came to life, beeping urgently. Aura leaned over the console, her brow furrowing as she interpreted the data. Jason, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the surface. They're concentrated in a single location. That must be Dukat's base. Jason peered at the readouts, his expression grim. Those energy levels are far higher than we anticipated. It looks like Dukat's been busy. The shuttle touched down on the moon's dusty surface, a short distance from the coordinates of the energy source. As the team disembarked, The true scale of Ducat's operation became apparent. A massive structure loomed before them, its architecture a blend of Cardassian utilitarian design and fortified defensive measures. "This is no hastily assembled hideout," Vedek Bareil observed, his usually serene face etched with concern. "Ducat has been planning this for some time." Jason nodded in agreement. "We'll need to split up to cover more ground. Kalar, take a team and secure the power generation sector. Vedek Bareil, you and your group focus on gathering intelligence. Any information about Ducat's plans could be crucial. Aura and I will head for the command center." As the team separated, Jason and Aura found themselves navigating a labyrinth of narrow corridors. The walls were lined with complex Cardassian security systems, forcing them to move cautiously. "Watch your step," Aura whispered, pointing to a nearly invisible laser grid across the floor. Cardassian security measures are often lethal. Jason nodded, impressed by Aura's knowledge. "Good catch. Can you disable it?" Aura smirked, already working on a nearby panel. "Please, I've been studying Cardassian tech since I was a child. This is child's play." As they progressed deeper into the base, Jason found himself increasingly relying on Aura's expertise. Her familiarity with Cardassian systems complemented his tactical training perfectly. They moved in sync, anticipating each other's actions without need for words. In one particularly tight passage, they were forced to press close together to avoid triggering motion sensors. Jason could feel the warmth of Aura's breath on his neck, the scent of her hair filling his nostrils. Their eyes met for a moment, and the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Meanwhile, Kalar's team had encountered resistance in the power generation sector. A group of Cardassian scientists caught off guard by the intrusion had quickly armed themselves and opened fire. Kalar roared with battle lust, her Doktog flashing as she charged the nearest opponent. "Today is a good day to die," she bellowed, her voice echoing off the metal walls. The firefight was fierce but short-lived. Kalar's Klingon combat training proved more than a match for the scientists' hasty defense. As the last Cardassian fell, Kalar noticed a large, ominous-looking device in the center of the room. "What is this abomination?" she demanded, gesturing to the machine. One of her team members, a Bajoran scientist, approached cautiously. His eyes widened as he examined the device. "By the prophets," he whispered. "It's a tectonic destabilizer. If activated, it could tear Bajor apart at the seams." In the heart of the base, Ducat stood before a bank of monitors, his scaled features illuminated by their glow. He tapped a series of commands, and a shimmering force field sprang to life around the command center. "Computer, initiate transmission to Cardassian Central Command," Ducat ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around him. "Priority 1 message. The time has come to reclaim what is rightfully ours. Send reinforcements immediately. Bajor will be Cardassian once more." As the message was sent, alarms began blaring throughout the base. Jason and Aura, now close to the command center, exchanged worried glances. "We're running out of time," Jason said, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to get to Ducat before those reinforcements arrive." Aura nodded, her fingers flying over another security panel. "I'm working on it, but this shield generator, it's unlike anything I've seen before." Ducat's pulled out all the stops. As they worked to breach the final defenses, Jason's communicator crackled to life. Lita's voice came through, tinged with panic. "Jason, we have a problem. Jaro Essa is using this crisis to rally his supporters. He's spreading rumors that this whole mission is a Federation plot to take control of Bajor. You need to end this quickly and come back with proof of Ducat's plans, or we might lose everything we've worked for." Jason's lips pursed. The stakes had just gotten higher. He looked at Aura, seeing his own dedication reflected in her eyes. "We'll get that proof," he promised Lita. "And we'll stop Ducat, whatever it takes." As they redoubled their efforts to breach the command center, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. Jason tensed, raising his phaser, but Aura put a hand on his arm. "Wait," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Those aren't Cardassian boot steps." A moment later, Kalar rounded the corner, her armor splattered with green Cardassian blood. Behind her came a group of Cardassian officers, their hands raised in surrender. "These worms claim they want to help," KLR spat. "They say they're tired of Ducat's leadership and can give us the key to breaching his defenses." Jason studied the Cardassians warily. "Can we trust them?" One of the Cardassians stepped forward. "You have no reason to trust us, human, but Ducat's megalomania threatens not just Bajor, but the entire stability of this sector. We believe it's time for new leadership. Leadership that can bring peace, not endless conflict." Jason exchanged a look with Aura and KLR. Time was running out, and they needed every advantage they could get. "All right," Jason said finally. "Show us how to bring down that shield. But know this, if this is a trick, you'll wish you'd never left Cardassia." The Cardassian nodded grimly and moved to the security panel. As he worked, Jason's mind raced. They were so close to Ducat, so close to ending this threat once and for all. But with Cardassian reinforcements on the way and political tensions rising on Bajor, he knew that capturing Ducat was just the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, navigating the complex web of interstellar politics, balancing the needs of Bajor with the interests of the Federation, and somehow finding a path to peace in a sector teetering on the brink of war. And through it all, he couldn't ignore the growing connection between himself and Aura, a bond that both thrilled and terrified him with its implications. As the shield began to flicker and fade, Jason took a deep breath. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. The next few hours would shape the future of not just Bajor, but the entire Alpha Quadrant. As the shield flickered and faded, Jason nodded to his team. "This is it. Let's end this." With a resounding crash, the force field collapsed. Jason, Aura, and KLR burst into the command center, weapons at the ready. Ducat stood before them, his face a mask of cold fury. "You're too late," he snarled, his finger hovering over a control panel. "Cardassian reinforcements are already on their way. Bajor will be ours again." Before anyone could react, Ducat slammed his hand down on the panel. Alarms blared throughout the base as the room shook violently. "He's activated the base's self-destruct sequence," Aura shouted, rushing to a nearby console. Her fingers flew over the controls, attempting to override the system. Jason turned to Kalar. "Secure Ducat. We need him alive." The Klingon woman grinned fiercely, advancing on the Cardassian leader. Ducat reached for a weapon, but Kalar was faster. With a swift move, she disarmed him and pinned him to the ground. "We've got incoming," one of the team members called out. "Multiple Cardassian warships detected on long-range sensors." Jason's mind raced. They had Ducat, but they needed to get off the moon and back to Bajor with their evidence before the reinforcements arrived. "Aura, can you download the base's data? We need proof of Ducat's plans." Aura nodded, her focus never leaving the console. "Already on it. Give me 2 minutes." Those 2 minutes felt like an eternity as the base continued to shake around them. Finally, Aura held up a data chip triumphantly. "Got it!" "Everyone to the shuttles now," Jason ordered. They raced through the crumbling corridors, KLR roughly dragging a protesting Ducat along. As they reached the surface, they could see the Cardassian ships entering the moon's orbit. The team split up, boarding their respective shuttles. Jason, Aura, and the captive Ducat found themselves in a shuttle piloted by a skilled Bajoran officer named Ro Laren. "Get us out of here, Ro," Jason called as he strapped himself in. Ro's hands danced over the controls, and the shuttle lurched into the air just as the base behind them erupted in a massive explosion. The shockwave buffeted their small craft, sending them tumbling through space. "Cardassian vessels incoming," Ro reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. "They're charging weapons." Jason moved to the tactical station, working in tandem with Aura to manage the shuttle's defensive systems. As Ro executed a series of dizzying, evasive maneuvers, Jason and Aura found themselves constantly brushing against each other, their bodies pressed close in the confined space. "Divert power to aft shields," Jason called out, reaching across Aura to adjust a setting. Their faces were inches apart, and for a moment their eyes locked. Despite the danger, Jason felt a jolt of electricity pass between them. Ro's voice cut through the tension. "Entering the asteroid field now. Hold on tight." The shuttle dove into a dense cluster of space rocks, weaving between the massive boulders with breathtaking precision. Behind them, several Cardassian ships attempted to follow, only to collide with the asteroids. As they emerged from the field, Jason's communicator crackled to life. Kalar's gruff voice filled the cabin. "Commander, we've engaged the enemy. These Cardassian defectors are proving useful after all. We'll buy you time to reach Bajor." Through the viewport, Jason could see Kalar's shuttle turning to face the oncoming Cardassian fleet. The small craft unleashed a barrage of weapons fire, catching the larger ships off guard. "Ro, set a course for Bajor," Jason ordered. "Maximum warp." As the stars streaked past them, Jason turned to find Aura staring at him, her eyes shining with a mix of admiration and something deeper. He reached out, taking her hand in his. Around them, the crew exchanged knowing glances, seeing in this gesture a symbol of the growing alliance between their peoples. Their moment of respite was short-lived. An urgent communication came through from Vedek Barayal's shuttle. "We're under attack. A Cardassian patrol slipped past the main force. We can't outrun them." Jason's grip on Aura's hand tightened as he made his decision. "Ro, change course. We're going to assist Barayal." Aura looked at him, concern etched on her face. "Jason, the artifacts on that shuttle, if they're lost—" He nodded grimly. "I know. We can't let that happen. Bajor needs those symbols of hope now, more than ever." As Ro adjusted their course, Jason moved to secure their prisoner. Dukat glared at him with undisguised hatred. "You're a fool, human. Even if you reach Bajor, Jaro Essa will never let you land. He'll see you all as invaders." Jason met Dukat's gaze steadily. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, we have a rescue to perform." The shuttle banked sharply as they approached Barayal's beleaguered vessel. Cardassian weapons fire flashed past them, narrowly missing their hull. Jason returned to the tactical station, working with Aura to target the enemy ships. "Steady," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "Wait for it." At the last possible moment, Ro executed a perfect roll, bringing their weapons to bear on the Cardassian patrol. Jason and Aura fired in perfect sync, their combined efforts striking the enemy ships with devastating accuracy. As the last Cardassian vessel exploded in a brilliant fireball, cheers erupted throughout the shuttle. Jason allowed himself a small smile, catching Aura's eye. There was no need for words. Their shared look spoke volumes. With Barayal's shuttle safe, they resumed their course to Bajor. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, however, a new challenge presented itself. The shuttle's communications array lit up with urgent messages from the surface. Lita's voice came through tight with worry. "Jason, be careful on your approach. Jaro Essa has rallied a significant force to prevent your landing. He's claiming you're bringing foreign invaders to Bajor." Jason's mind raced as he considered their options. They needed a secure location to land, but they also needed visibility. The evidence they carried had to reach the Bajoran people directly. He made his decision. "Ro, take us to the center of the capital city. We're going to broadcast our arrival openly." Aura looked at him, her eyes wide. "Are you sure about this?" Jason nodded, his teeth clenched. It's time to let the truth speak for itself. As the shuttle descended towards the heart of the city, Jason could see the crowds gathering below. Jaro Essa's supporters were there in force, but so were countless curious Bajorans, eager to learn the truth. "Ready?" Jason asked, turning to Aura. She took a deep breath, then nodded, her hand finding his once more. "Ready." The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud. As the hatch opened, Jason and Aura stepped out hand in hand, facing the assembled crowd. Behind them, Kalar emerged, roughly shoving Gul Dukat forward. A hush fell over the gathered Bajorans as they took in the scene before them. Jason's eyes scanned the crowd, finding Jaro Essa at the forefront, his face a mask of nearly unleashed rage. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shape the future of Bajor. As Jason prepared to address the crowd, he felt Aura's hand squeeze his gently. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Together, whatever the future might hold. Jason took a deep breath, squeezing Aura's hand one last time before releasing it. He stepped forward, facing the crowd that had gathered in the central plaza. The air was thick with tension as Bajorans from all walks of life watched, their expressions a mix of curiosity, suspicion, and hope. "People of Bajor," Jason began, his voice clear and steady, "we come before you today with truth, not propaganda, with evidence, not empty words." He nodded to Aura, who activated a small device she'd been carrying. A holographic display flickered to life, hovering above the crowd. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the assembled Bajorans as images began to play. The holo projector displayed a series of damning scenes. Gul Dukat speaking with his operatives, surveillance footage of Bajoran citizens, and detailed plans for manipulating Bajoran society. As the evidence unfolded, the crowd's reaction shifted from shock to outrage. "This is what Gul Dukat had planned for Bajor," Jason explained, his voice grim. "A return to Cardassian control, achieved through deception and manipulation." Jaro Essa pushed his way to the front of the crowd, his face contorted with anger. "Lies!" he shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at Jason and Aura. "These outsiders seek to corrupt our values with fabricated evidence." But even as Essa spoke, several Bajorans in the crowd began to step forward. One, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, raised her voice. "I recognize that man," she said, pointing to a figure in one of the holographic images. "He approached me months ago, asking questions about our local government. I thought he was just curious, but now—" Others joined in, sharing similar stories. The realization that they had unknowingly been part of Dukat's network of informants spread through the crowd like wildfire. Essa's arguments faltered in the face of this unexpected corroboration. He opened his mouth to speak again, but was interrupted by the arrival of another shuttle. The craft touched down nearby, and Vedek Bareil emerged, followed by aides carefully carrying ornate containers. "Behold," Bareil called out, his voice ringing with authority, "the lost treasures of Bajor returned to us at last." As the aides opened the containers, revealing artifacts of immense cultural and religious significance, a hush fell over the crowd. Many Bajorans, including some of Essa's staunchest supporters, were visibly moved by the sight. Bareil moved to stand beside Jason and Aura. "These artifacts were recovered through the combined efforts of our Bajoran brothers and sisters and our new allies," he said, gesturing to the human and Klingon members of the team. "In this time of crisis, we must be open to new alliances and new ideas." The crowd's mood was shifting, the earlier hostility giving way to a cautious optimism. But before anyone could respond to Bareil's words, the distinctive sound of another shuttle's engines filled the air. Kaelar's craft landed with a thud, and the Klingon woman emerged, her armor still bearing the marks of recent battle. "The Cardassians have been engaged in orbit," she announced, her voice carrying across the plaza. "Federation and Klingon ships have arrived to assist in Bajor's defense." This news sent a ripple of excitement through the crowd. The idea that powerful allies were coming to Bajor's aid seemed to ease many of the remaining doubts. Seizing the moment, Jason gestured to the Cardassian defectors who had aided in Dukat's capture. "These individuals have chosen to stand against Dukat's regime," he explained. "They're prepared to reveal the full extent of Cardassian operations on Bajor." One of the defectors stepped forward, his expression solemn. "We can provide information about sleeper agents and hidden Cardassian technology across your world," he said. "We hope this will help secure Bajor's future independence." As if on cue, Leda and her group of progressive Bajorans began moving through the crowd. They carried with them examples of human art, music, and cuisine, showcasing how these could be integrated with Bajoran traditions. The impromptu cultural exchange drew curious onlookers, helping to further diffuse the tension. Amidst this flurry of activity, Kai Wynn made her way to the front of the gathering. Her eyes swept over the scene, taking in the shifted dynamics. With a nod to herself, she raised her voice to be heard above the crowd. "In light of these revelations, I am calling for an emergency session of the Bajoran Council," she announced. "Commander Jason, Aura, you will present your findings formally before the Council. We must address this crisis with transparency and wisdom." As the crowd began to disperse, buzzing with discussion about the upcoming Council session, Jason pulled Aura aside. They found a moment of relative privacy behind one of the shuttles. "Aura," Jason said softly, looking into her eyes, I couldn't have done any of this without you. Whatever happens next, I want you to know. His words were cut off as Aura leaned in, pressing her lips against his. The kiss was passionate, a release of all the tension and unspoken feelings that had built up between them. For a moment, the chaos around them faded away, and there was only this connection, this shared understanding. Neither of them noticed that they were still within range of the active holo projector. Their intimate moment was broadcast across the plaza, visible to all who remained. But instead of outrage or scandal, the crowd's reaction was one of surprise, followed by a mix of cheers, applause, and curious murmurs. As Jason and Aura broke apart, realizing what had happened, they saw not condemnation in the eyes of the Bajorans, but a growing acceptance. Their relationship, so unexpected and yet so genuine, seemed to embody the very spirit of the new alliance they were proposing. With renewed commitment, they made their way towards the council chambers, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future of Bajor hung in the balance, and they knew that their next words could shape the destiny of an entire world. As they made their way towards the council chambers, Jason and Aura couldn't have predicted how their actions would shape the future of Bajor and their own lives. In the weeks that followed, the Bajoran Council's decision to ally with the Federation and Klingon Empire set in motion a series of events that would transform Bajoran society. Jason and Aura found themselves at the center of this cultural revolution, appointed as cultural exchange ambassadors. Their first public event took place in the same plaza where they had first revealed the truth about Dukat's plans. This time, however, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation rather than tension. Colorful banners adorned the buildings, and the air was filled with the aroma of both Bajoran and human cuisines. Jason stood before the gathered crowd, Aura at his side. "Today," he announced, his voice carrying across the plaza, "we begin a new chapter in Bajoran human relations. We're here to share, to learn, and to grow together." As he spoke, a group of human musicians began to play a lively tune. The crowd watched in fascination as Jason took Aura's hand, leading her in a spirited dance that was entirely foreign to Bajoran eyes. Their movements were fluid and intimate, eliciting gasps and murmurs from the onlookers. "This," Jason explained as they twirled, "is called a waltz. It's a traditional earth dance that's been enjoyed for centuries." As the music faded, Jason and Aura demonstrated other human customs, from handshakes to high fives. The crowd's initial shock gave way to curiosity and even excitement. Young Bajorans in particular seemed eager to try these new forms of interaction. The event reached its climax when Jason turned to Aura, his eyes twinkling. "And now," he said loud enough for the crowd to hear, "I'll demonstrate a human gesture of affection." With that, he leaned in and placed a gentle kiss on Aura's lips. The crowd erupted in a mix of gasps, giggles, and applause. For many Bajorans, this public display of affection was shocking, yet strangely alluring. As the event wound down, Jason and Aura found themselves surrounded by eager Bajorans, particularly young women, all clamoring to learn more about human dating rituals. "Is it true that humans go on dates before committing to a relationship?" one young Bajoran woman asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Aura fielded this question, her cheeks still flushed from the kiss. "Yes, it's a way for humans to get to know each other better before making a serious commitment." The questions continued late into the night, and by the time Jason and Aura retired to their quarters, they were exhausted but exhilarated. Neither of them could have anticipated the impact their relationship would have on Bajoran society. In the days that followed, holovid recordings of their interactions spread across Bajoran communication networks like wildfire. Jason and Aura became overnight sensations, their every move scrutinized and discussed by millions of Bajorans. As they walked through the streets of the capital, they often heard whispers and giggles. "Look, it's the human and his Bajoran girlfriend." The attention was both flattering and overwhelming. Meanwhile, Starfleet wasted no time in establishing a permanent presence on Bajor. A team of human engineers arrived, their shuttles touching down on the outskirts of the capital. Jason and Aura were there to greet them, along with a group of Bajoran technicians. "Welcome to Bajor," Jason said, shaking hands with the lead engineer. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us." The integration of human and Bajoran technologies proved to be a fascinating process. In one of the planetary defense control rooms, A human engineer named Sarah worked side by side with a Bajoran technician called Merrick. If we recalibrate the phase variance like this, Sarah suggested, her fingers flying over the control panel, we can increase the shield strength by at least 15%. Merrick's eyes widened as he saw the results. Incredible! And if we combine that with our own resonance frequency modulators. Their excited chatter filled the room as they worked, a microcosm of the larger collaboration taking place across Bajor. As the cultural exchange program gained momentum, K'Ehleyr approached Jason and Aura with a proposal. The Klingon Empire wishes to participate more actively in this exchange, she said, her voice grave but her eyes glinting with excitement. I propose a demonstration of Klingon customs. The demonstration took place in a large arena on the outskirts of the capital. K'Ehleyr, dressed in full Klingon battle armor, stood before a crowd of wide-eyed Bajorans. Today, she roared, her voice carrying to the farthest reaches of the arena, you will witness the glory of Klingon combat. What followed was a display of Klingon martial arts that left the Bajoran audience both awed and slightly terrified. The clang of batleths and the guttural cries of Klingon battle songs filled the air. To everyone's surprise, Jason and Aura joined in the demonstration, albeit with considerably less skill than K'Ehleyr. Their willingness to participate, however, drew cheers from the crowd. As Jason awkwardly wielded a batleth, nearly dropping it several times, Aura couldn't help but laugh. You look absolutely ridiculous, she said, her eyes twinkling with mirth. Jason grinned back at her. Maybe, but I bet I still look better than I did trying to play the Bajoran lute at last week's musical exchange. Their laughter, picked up by nearby microphones, echoed through the arena, a symbol of the joy and harmony that the cultural exchange program was fostering. However, not everyone on Bajor was pleased with these developments. As Jason and Aura left the arena, hand in hand, they noticed a group of protesters gathered near the exit. Their signs bore slogans like, Preserve Bajoran Purity, and Resist Foreign Influence. At the head of the group stood a familiar face, one of Jaro Essa's former lieutenants. His eyes blazed with anger as he spotted Jason and Aura. Look at them, he shouted to his followers. They seek to corrupt our youth with their alien ways. We must stand against this invasion of our culture. Jason felt Aura's hand tighten in his as they quickened their pace, security personnel moving to intercept the protesters. The shouts faded behind them, but the tension lingered. As they reached the safety of their shuttle, Jason turned to Aura. Are you okay? He asked, concern evident in his voice. Aura nodded, but her expression was troubled. I'm fine. But Jason, what if they're right? What if we're changing Bajor too quickly? Before Jason could respond, his communicator chirped. Commander, came the voice of his Starfleet liaison. We've just received some troubling intelligence from the Gamma Quadrant. You're needed at headquarters immediately. Jason and Aura exchanged a look. Whatever challenges they had faced so far, it seemed that greater ones lay ahead. As their shuttle lifted off, heading toward Starfleet headquarters, they both knew that their adventure was just getting started. Beginning. As their shuttle approached Starfleet headquarters, Jason and Aura exchanged worried glances, their earlier concerns momentarily forgotten in light of this new development. Upon arrival, they were immediately ushered into a secure briefing room. Admiral Ross, his face grave, stood at the head of a long table, surrounded by senior Starfleet officers and Bajoran officials. Commander Aura, he nodded to them as they took their seats. We've received disturbing reports from our long-range probes in the Gamma Quadrant. There's evidence of a highly advanced civilization with potentially hostile intentions towards the Alpha Quadrant. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing sensor readings and grainy images of sleek, unfamiliar ships. Jason leaned forward, studying the data intently. Given your unique position and the success of your cultural exchange program, Admiral Ross continued, we believe you two are the best candidates to lead a joint mission to the Gamma Quadrant. Your goal will be to make first contact and, if possible, establish peaceful relations. The room erupted in a flurry of discussions and debates. Kai Wynn, present via holographic projection, raised her voice above the din. This is a matter for the Bajoran Council to decide. We cannot simply allow Starfleet to dictate our involvement in such a dangerous mission. Jason stood, his eyes scanning the room. With all due respect, Kai Wynn, this affects all of us. The Bajoran people have a unique perspective that could be invaluable in this mission. I propose we present this to the Council immediately. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Jason and Aura found themselves at the center of intense debates in the Bajoran Council chambers. They presented their case passionately, emphasizing the potential benefits of peaceful contact and the risks of remaining ignorant of this new civilization. As the Council deliberated, Jason and Aura took a moment to themselves in a quiet corner of the chambers. "Whatever happens," Jason said softly, taking Aura's hand, "we're in this together." Aura squeezed his hand in response, her eyes reflecting a mix of dedication and apprehension. "I never imagined our relationship would lead to something like this," she whispered. Their moment was interrupted by the sound of the council doors opening. First Minister Shakar emerged, his expression unreadable. "The council has reached a decision," he announced. "We approve the joint mission to the Gamma Quadrant, with Commander Jason and Aura at its helm." The announcement was met with a mix of cheers and concerned murmurs. As the reality of their new mission sank in, Jason and Aura found themselves swept up in a flurry of preparations. Over the next weeks, they underwent intensive training, pushing their physical and mental limits. Simulations of possible first contact scenarios, tactical drills, and advanced diplomatic protocols filled their days. During this time, they worked closely with Kalar and a team of Bajoran scientists to develop new technologies. In a lab filled with a mix of Federation, Klingon, and Bajoran equipment, they combined their knowledge and strengths. "If we integrate the Klingon cloaking technology with Bajoran sensor arrays," Kalar suggested, her fingers dancing over a complex schematic, "we could create a stealth reconnaissance system unlike anything seen before." Aura nodded enthusiastically, adding her own insights. "And if we incorporate some of the psionic energy techniques we've been developing, we might be able to enhance our long-range communications capabilities." As the departure date approached, excitement and tension built across Bajor. The night before they were set to leave, Vedek Bareil approached Jason and Aura with an unexpected proposal. "Your relationship has become a symbol of unity for our people," he said, his eyes twinkling. "I would be honored to officiate a traditional Bajoran bonding ceremony for you before your departure." Surprised but touched, Jason and Aura agreed. The ceremony, hastily arranged but no less meaningful, took place in the same plaza where they had first revealed the truth about Dukat's plans. As they stood before Vedek Bareil, hands clasped and eyes locked, a hush fell over the gathered crowd. The ceremony was broadcast across Bajor, and millions watched as Jason and Aura exchanged vows, their words a mix of Bajoran tradition and human sentiment. "With this union," Vedek Bareil intoned, "we celebrate not just the joining of two individuals, but the coming together of two peoples." As Jason and Aura sealed their vows with a kiss, a cheer erupted from the crowd. Even some former skeptics found themselves moved by the genuine affection between the human and Bajoran couple. The next morning, as they prepared to board the expedition ship, aptly named Unity, Jason and Aura stood hand in hand, facing the wormhole. The sleek vessel, a blend of Federation, Klingon, and Bajoran design, hummed with potential. "Ready?" Jason asked, giving Aura's hand a gentle squeeze. Aura nodded, her eyes fixed on the shimmering event horizon of the wormhole. "Ready?" As they stepped onto the bridge of the Unity, the crew, a diverse mix of humans, Bajorans, and Klingons, stood at attention. Jason took the captain's chair with Aura at his side. "Take us in," Jason commanded, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. The Unity glided forward, approaching the mouth of the wormhole. As they crossed the threshold, a burst of brilliant light filled the view screen. The ship shuddered slightly as it entered the subspace corridor. Suddenly, Aura gasped, her hand flying to her temple. Jason turned to her, concern etched on his face. "Aura, what's wrong?" Before she could respond, Jason felt a strange sensation wash over him. The world around him seemed to blur, and he found himself immersed in a flood of images and emotions that were not his own. In that moment, as the Unity traversed the wormhole to the Gamma Quadrant, Jason and Aura's minds linked in ways they never thought possible. Their journey into the unknown had only just begun, and the adventures that awaited them would test not only their newfound bond, but the very future of interstellar relations.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.